Welcome to Yahoo Finance Presents. I'm Andy Serwer, and I'm delighted to be joined by Darren Walker, the president of the Ford Foundation. Darren, so great to see you.
Thank you, Andy, for having me.
So you have some big news. You're just announcing right now that the Ford Foundation is going to be borrowing money so that it can disperse more funds to help out in this time of need. Can you explain what's going on with this new endeavor?
Well, this is motivated by the reality that our nonprofit sector in this country, which is vital to our functioning democracy, is at risk because of the economic fallout of COVID-19. And they are already seeing reductions in giving. Fundraisers have been canceled. Theaters are dark. Earned revenue is down. So this is going to be a very challenging time for nonprofits in America. Our role as a foundation is to support these nonprofits, and we do that from our endowment. Unfortunately, when markets get volatile, we pull back traditionally, and now is not the time to pull back. So with the recent decision by the Fed to lower rates to a historical low, it made possible the idea of borrowing. As a AAA rated entity, we can go to market at a pretty aggressive rate and borrow at a level that we believe over time will be less than what we will make through our investment. So rather than taking money from our endowment, $1 billion, we're going to borrow $1 billion at a very low rate. Our hypothesis is that over 30 to 50 years, which is the terms of the bond, we will be able to outperform the rate that we're paying and continue to grow our endowment. This will make possible $1 billion of new grants for nonprofits. And the other good news is that 4 foundations have joined with Ford. The Mellon Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, Kellogg Foundation, and Duke Foundation have all joined with us. And together, we are able to commit over $1.7 billion. And I believe there are other foundations who will be joining us shortly.
I mean, this is fascinating. I have all kinds of questions, but just a few. I mean, so first of all, you guys were taking the lead on this, and has this ever been done before?
No, this is very uncommon. Foundations borrow for capital projects, but we've never borrowed to make grants. But we've never had an interest rate environment like this either. And so had this been a year or 2 years ago, this strategy would not have been an opportunity that we would have taken advantage of. But given where market rates are, basically money is almost free now, Andy. And I love the idea of making the markets work for social justice. The grants that the Ford Foundation gives are to an array of organizations fighting inequality in the areas of criminal justice reform, improving conditions for workers, advancing the rights of people to ensure that they vote. These are all the ways in which the proceeds of this bond will be used.
And just one more question on that. Did you work with investment bankers? You obviously know a lot of people in that world. How did you come to this strategy?
Well, I was very lucky. At the foundation, we have the chair of our investment committee is Peter Nadishi, who spent many years at Morgan Stanley and himself today runs a very successful asset management company. Also, Peter Weinberg at Perella Weinberg was a terrific advisor early on when I was test driving the idea. And then we benefited from the underwriting support of Wells Fargo and Morgan Stanley.
Let's shift gears a little bit, Darren, and talk about the other huge topic facing America right now, which is the protests and this new awareness of racial and social injustice in the wake of George Floyd's death, something you've been working on really your entire life. What makes this moment different?
I think what makes this moment different, Andy, is that deniability of racism is no longer an option. I think for many Americans, many white Americans, friends of mine who I talk to about this has been a heartbreaking experience to witness the murder of an American citizen in broad daylight by a police officer who was aware that he was being videotaped and proceeded to kill another human being. I don't think this is the America that any of us want, white or black. And I think the reason it has gripped us is because people feel in their hearts that there is something we must do in this country to address the challenge that is the historic reality of racism in America.
Where do you think this goes, Darren? Is it just going to peter out, or are we going to have some real change?
I think we're going to see real change because when I talk to CEOs and civic leaders, people are not talking about the old playbook of simply giving grants to black to black organizations, for example, but doing truly systemic things, really looking at the composition of our boards, thinking seriously about the gaps in leadership of large companies and other important institutions in our society. And I think we're already seeing the ways in which our society is going to be changed, I believe, for the better. I do believe that white Americans, black Americans, brown Americans, we are all, at the end of the day, Americans. And what binds us, yes, we have individual identities and we have our own histories. I did not come to America as an immigrant. My ancestors came as enslaved people. But today, we are all Americans. And we do want this country to live up to its ideals. I'm reminded of Langston Hughes' poem, "Let America be America." I believe that's what we all want. It's for this great country to live up to its potential.
You recently said that corporate America has failed Black Americans. What do you mean by that? And what steps, tangible steps, can businesses really take now, Darren?
I think when you look across the leadership of corporate America, it is rather startling. There are only 4 African American CEOs. In fact, the numbers have gone down. The number of large public companies that have no African Americans in their C-suite is also astonishing. And I am beginning to hear, I've spoken to at least a dozen CEOs in the last 10 days. Everyone is concerned, everyone is worried, and everyone is thinking about specific interventions, which, in my view, are interventions such as setting targets for increasing representation on boards, being serious about diversity in the C-suite, managing your talent pipeline to ensure that you have a bench, and not waking up one day and realizing that you don't have a bench because you haven't nurtured it. Having relationships with civil society, with representatives of communities is very important. So I think this is an awakening for corporate America. I think most CEOs want to do the right thing and are looking for help.
Darren, I know you don't like to get political, but I have to ask you, President Trump is holding a rally apparently on Juneteenth in Oklahoma. And I wanted to ask you about that and whether or not you think that his leadership has been divisive.
Well, I certainly believe that Juneteenth is an important day. I'm from Texas, and it was always a holiday that we celebrated with great joy because it was the day that Blacks were told of our freedom. And while it was delayed we were, as a people, elated nonetheless. I'm not a political person, and I don't comment on elected officials or candidates. My only observation about leadership in America today is that we need leaders at all levels who inspire us and who make the idea of public service, the noble idea that it is, they realize and live and model that. All leaders need to do that across society, because leaders today are less trusted. They are less believed by their constituencies. And so we need to lift up leadership and noble, valiant, courageous leadership, which America needs today more than ever.
And last question here. I think Evan Spiegel from SNAP says he supports the creation of a nonpartisan commission on reparations. Where do you stand on that issue, Darren?
I think there's absolutely a need to talk about the historical racism that has impaired the ability of African Americans to build wealth, to accumulate assets. And I think there are multiple ways we can, as a nation and through policy, have that conversation. And I'm hoping that in the months ahead, we'll be able to do that.
Darren, you have a new initiative you're funding, spotlighting police brutality, that is being spearheaded by Ava DuVernay. Can you talk about that, please?
Ava DuVernay is one of the greatest filmmakers in this country. What she did with the film Selma was quite remarkable. Her new initiative, which seeks to bring greater transparency in the area of policing, is something I think we all would welcome. And so the Ford Foundation is proud to support that.
Darren Walker, president of the Ford Foundation, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck to you.
Thank you, Andy, for having me.